want to thank Morty Lunger and YBA for creating this incredible forum that I think has amazing potential for so many of us. And it's really, it's an honor and a privilege to be here to share some thoughts with you. I see two of myself in the box. That's pretty freaky. Okay, no worries. So I'll just have to not look at myself there. So I want to start off just a little bit of background, kind of who I am, a little bit of context, and then I'm going to pivot into some insights in terms of my own experiences building relationships and maintaining important relationships. That's really the goal here. And then, of course, we'll open it up to questions and comments and feedback. So my name is Dovid Cohen. It's actually a pretty well-known name. I'm sure everybody here knows a Dovid Cohen or two Dovid Cohens or 10 Dovid Cohens. I'm not the famous posek in Brooklyn, at least not yet. And I'm not the Rosh Hashiva of Hebron. And I'm not a whole array of other Dovid Cohens that you may know. I grew up in a place called West Hempstead on Long Island here in New York. I live currently in the 5 towns in North Woodmere. And I've had a diverse array of professional responsibilities throughout my life. I started off early on in my 20s studying for the rabbinate as well as attending law school. I actually did both of those things. I worked as an assistant rabbi in a synagogue in a shul in New Jersey, and I also worked in various corporate law firms. And do I need to mute that, or how does it work with that?
How is that? You can still hear it?
Yeah, I just hear the music coming through.
What is going on there? Give me 1 second.
We got off? Okay. So I worked as a rabbi, I worked as an attorney, and then I pursued also a degree in counseling and got involved in counseling. And after spending time in the for-profit world and in the rabbinical world, I then, for the last 7 years or so, I've pivoted to the not-for-profit world. I got some guys mowing the lawns out there. I'm going to put in the earpiece here. Sorry, 1 second.
He's putting some earphones in right now.
Put his AirPods in.
Can you guys hear him now? Go ahead, David. They can hear you now, I think.
You hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, sorry. Apologies. Just some noise outside my window. So I've worked basically in for-profit and not-for-profit, and I've had the good fortune to build a lot of meaningful relationships throughout that journey. So that's kind of the background of where I am today and where I am. And my livelihood is very much based on relationships in terms of a not-for-profit fundraiser and also a little bit in terms of helping individuals on occasion with different for-profit opportunities, connecting them to meaningful introductions and the like. So I'm going to frame this a little bit in terms of a chazal. There's a, I don't know everybody's religious level of observance or knowledge here, so I'll just translate, but Torah sources basically share this idea. It's in Tractate Brachos, this idea in terms of marriage, that there's 3 levels of depth in terms of marriage, referred to as that one of the great rabbis had a dream, and in that dream he saw a river, a kettle, and a bird. And this is something, a book has been used, the Rosh Hashiva of Ner Yisrael, Rav Aaron Feldman actually wrote a book about this many years ago, wrote a book about marital harmony based on these principles. And the principles of a river, in the sense that a river represents kind of 2 cities or two houses or 2 different individuals or entities can share the resources of a river, right? They can each glean from the river, but it's kind of purely transactional. It's physical benefit. On top of that, the higher level then is a kettle. A kettle basically merges together fire and water. Fire and water, the fire can extinguish the water can extinguish the fire, but basically the floor of the kettle can actually hold the 2 together. You can have the fire beneath the floor, and then you have the water on top, and you can have kind of this synthesis, which is kind of a connection or a blending of different emotions. And then the highest level is ultimately when you have the bird. A bird is something that can walk upon the earth, but can also at the same time, a bird can also traverse the heavens and can be kind of way above as well. And that kind of represents the highest level, which represents kind of the spiritual side of interaction. And I think I was recently at a fundraising conference, and the presenter was a professor at an illustrious university, and he kind of shared that there's a similar parallel idea in the world of fundraising. I always just thought that fundraisers use different terminology, like I'm a fundraiser, I'm a development professional, I'm an advancement officer. I never really appreciated that each of those categories actually connotes a different level of relationship. And he went on to explain that a fundraiser is kind of like the river. It's very transactional. It's very basic. It's very much kind of like, I need something from you. Maybe you're going to get something out of this. Maybe you're not. But I'm approaching you very much like what's in it for me, and I want to kind of take something from you. A higher level is actually what's called a development professional. At least there, you're beginning to cultivate, develop a relationship, listen, get to understand a little bit more about the needs of the other person that you're talking to and that you're interacting with. And the highest level is kind of an advancement officer, which means you're trying to advance the enterprise. You're trying to create a partnership. You're trying to add value. And it's interesting to me that there are three different languages that are used in the world of professional fundraising, in the world of professional development, which actually echo, I think, the three different levels that Chazal also use in terms of talking about the most intimate of relationships, which is the relationship of marriage. And that is that ultimately in all of our interactions, particularly business interactions, we need to be conscious and sensitive of how am I approaching this relationship, right? If you're making a sales call, how am I approaching this? Am I approaching this about what can I get from it? Or am I approaching this in terms of how can I add value? What can I give here? And how can I make a positive impact? And these are things that I think we always have to be very, very conscious of in building and establishing relationships and getting trust with our associates, with our donor base, with our customers, our clients, whatever in fact that may be. Now, I think it requires a certain level of humbleness in the sense that, it's not easy always to kind of approach relationships in terms of being the giver as opposed to the receiver. It requires some level of trust and understanding that if I'm able to invest and I'm able to take the time to really understand the other, understand what their needs are, then I can ultimately, at the end of the day, I can provide value, and that value will then boomerang back to me and give me a tremendous amount of benefit that I aspire toward. I can think it's interesting, recently, I've had, if people can mute, I don't know if we can mute the backgrounds, but see if we could do that.
I got it muted, I got it.
Okay, thanks. So just this idea, I've had some, interactions recently where I really, from the goodness of my own heart, I helped individuals that I had pre-existing relationships with things that were important to them. And in one situation, I actually was successful in helping the person raise a lot of money for a startup venture that he was involved in. And another one, I frankly wasn't that successful, although I made many, many meaningful introductions to the individual to help him, to give him every opportunity in the world to be successful in terms of pitching his endeavor. So in one situation, the mazel was that it was successful. In one situation, it wasn't successful. But I can tell you that, frankly, being on the receiving end in terms of here I am, I'm putting myself out, I'm trying to help these people. And frankly, at different points, both of them kind of came back to me with, I would say, like complaints. One of them was kind of like, well, you didn't really add as much value as you think you did. Or another one came back to me and said, the reason why I'm not converting on these introductions is because, you're whatever his pitch was in terms of I wasn't as heavily invested in his product as maybe somebody else might have been. But the point was, like, if somebody's bending over backwards and trying to help you, and then you're going to kind of like, you're going to offend them, or you're going to tell them that what they did was not worth your while. So it's not a great way to kind of cultivate goodwill and ensure that those people are going to be invested in helping you in the future. It's interesting. I mean, I think a lot of times we do this, we have to understand that, always, where is the other person coming from? The other person is trying to add value to you. They're making a good faith effort. It may not be exactly what you were looking for, but we have to always be sensitive that if a person does anything that's helpful to us and that's going out of their comfort zone and is stretching for us, we need to be makir tov. We have to be cognizant of that. We have to express our gratitude. We have to always make sure that the relationship is intact and it's a situation where the person feels appreciated and we show our gratitude to the person. And that's, I think, sometimes we lose sight of that, particularly in a business setting where things can be very, very bottom line, it's very, very important that we retain and we maintain the relationship. This is something that I've heard, there's a lot about this in terms of, there's an instrument that many of us use. I use it, right? It's called the iPhone. I don't have the most sophisticated version of it, but the idea that why did Steve Jobs call the iPhone? Why did he name it the iPhone? So that's also, there's a lot written about this idea that it was built on a concept that also parallels an idea in Chazal of Bishvili Nivra Ha'olam, right? A person has to walk around. The rabbis teach us that in one pocket, a person has to be very humble, exceedingly humble, va'anochi afar va'efer. The other pocket, he has to have the mantra of Bishvili Nivra Ha'olam. The world is my oyster. I have the opportunity to conquer. I have the opportunity to influence. I have the opportunity to make an impact, to make a tremendous roshem on the world, to create a new edifice, to write a story, right? And a person always has to balance that. And the idea of the iPhone was that you can have the world is my oyster. Like in the palm of my hand, I can have everything that I possibly need. But at the same time, so it's the iPhone. It's all about me. It's all about my accessing information. But at the same time, one has to recognize that the world is not just encompassed by I, right? The Hebrew word I is ani. Ani has an aleph, it has a yud, and it has a nun. The aleph represents one, it's the individual. The yud is 10. It represents a quorum, it represents 10 people. And a nun represents the numerical value of nun is 50, which represents the 50 realms of Torah wisdom, parallel to the 50 days that we ascend to receive the Torah on Shavuot. So we have this idea, there has to always be a synthesis of the individual to the community. It has to be done with a lot of wisdom, with a lot of seichel. One has to understand, again, it's hard to do it over Zoom, but as best as possible to understand, at least what Morty tried to explain to me what the community wants, right? To really understand what's the value add, what are people looking for, and hopefully we'll have some interactive questions so I can hopefully address things that maybe I'm not addressing in my frontal presentation. But to the degree that we're always thinking about the other, that's essential to success in business. So one tip that I want to use is that it's always great to ask highly successful people for advice. You're going to ask people for money, they're not going to be so interested. You're going to ask people to sit and hear your pitch, they're not going to be so interested. If you go ask people for advice, this is very sound advice, right? By the way, if you ask people who have had greater success than you, or greater wealth than you, or greater experience than you, and you say, I really, really would value your advice, and the caveat to this is you genuinely have to be open to hearing their advice and their input. So if you're able to do that, you're going to have a lot of success. You're going to see that you're able to get the meetings that maybe you couldn't get otherwise. So this morning I was sitting in Starbucks. I'm just going to turn on my fan because it's a little bit warm in here. So this morning I was sitting in Starbucks, and a gentleman who is a friend of mine, who is a donor of mine, who is a very, very financially successful, lovely fella, spontaneously bumped into him in Starbucks. So this presentation was actually on my mind because it was this afternoon. So I was already kind of on my bicycle ride over to Starbucks. I was thinking, what do I want to talk about? What are some of the key points I want to touch on? So this guy's name is Greg. So I saw Greg. So I said, Greg, you want to sit down for a few minutes? You're in a rush? I want to pick your brain for a few minutes. I want to ask your advice. Wonderful. So Greg sits down. So I said, I'm talking to a group of entrepreneurs, a group of business people. I'm talking about relationships, building rapport, maintaining relationships, ultimately for the purpose of deepening value and presumably also to make money. What's your advice? I asked him. Okay, so he actually thought about it, and the first thing he said to me was, tell everybody that they genuinely have to really, really listen. Okay, if you want to be really good at anything in life, you have to listen. He said most people don't listen. It's really true. If you have a conversation frequently with somebody, we all can tell when somebody's not really listening to what we're saying, right? It happens a lot. There are a lot of distractions. People have ADD. But the truth is, if you're in sales, or you're trying to build rapport, or trying to build trust, so I find this often with high net worth people, you have to be like laser focused on what they're saying, right? You have to retain what they're saying, you have to interpret what they're saying, you have to store what they're saying, you have to be able to use it in subsequent follow-ups. I know there are times when fundraisers come from Israel and they'll knock on my door. There's one guy, he sits down with me, and I can tell that he must have sat down post our previous conversation and wrote down how many children I had, what their names were, and I was blown away by it, because the guy, he took the time to invest in me and to show me that I mattered to him. And he came back with very, very specific questions, very specific feedback. And I found this to be incredible, okay? Because it showed me that he really, really was invested in me personally. And I approached him completely differently. And I give him much more substantial amounts of money than I give other people that randomly knock on my door, because he was able to communicate to me this idea that he was genuinely listening to what I have to say. So I think this is crucial in terms of listening. I mean, it's rooted also in the Talmud. The rabbis teach that we have 2 ears and 1 mouth, because we're supposed to listen double 2 times the amount in terms of how much we listen versus how much we speak. Right? There's a concept called the Pareto principle in business, that ultimately 80% of your returns come from 20% of your investment, and some people would even argue it's the 90-10 rule or the 95-5 rule. And this idea is so crucial in terms of listening. I think, we all want to talk. People want to talk about themselves, but oftentimes also when you're in meetings, you want to glean as much information as possible. Sometimes you want to give away as little information as possible, depending on the context, depending on who you're talking to. And it's essential. I was in Vegas 2 weeks ago at a conference, and somebody that I do some work with was sitting with me at the table, and I can tell we were schmoozing with some people in the restaurant, and something came up, and he started to open up his mouth a little too much, and I kind of kicked the guy into the table. I'm like, you don't need to share that. It's important. But it just goes to the point that people love to talk. People like to brag. People like to talk about how great they are. People like to exaggerate. I get a big kick out of LinkedIn. This is just a personal peeve of mine. LinkedIn is an amazing tool. Maybe I'm on LinkedIn right now streaming, but I think it's incredible. People on LinkedIn are, it's hard to credibly believe that everybody is a top best-selling author, gave 20 TED Talks, so on and so forth. 20 people, they closed 20 deals in that day. I don't want to be a cynic. I'm saying? Everybody sells themselves hard, and they have to. But it's something also to keep in mind. I think that sometimes we sell too hard, right? Sometimes it's just kind of, we say Stella hate, we say quiet, you don't have to you don't always have to have, I don't know if braggadocious is a word, but you don't always have to have so much bravado. You can kind of do things in a tactful way. I think it's important because the energy we give off, the vibes we give off, are we a humble person? Are we an arrogant person? Are we credible? So these are all things that people are assessing. And I know when I'm assessing people on LinkedIn, I think it's very important. You have to, as much as I may not like it, you do have to share, you do have to communicate that you add value, but you don't have to go over the top. And I think that's something that's crucial. So the first thing that Greg said to me this morning was to make sure that people understand the value of listening. So I'm going to talk a little bit. I'm going to pivot. I want to keep track of time here. I don't want to get too carried away myself. I'm going to pivot in a few minutes to talk about mentors. Before I get to mentors, I want to just share a great story. One of my mentors is a great fundraiser. His name is Rabbi Yitz Greenman. He's somebody who some of you may have heard of. He's really a master fundraiser, teacher of fundraisers. He has a lot of content on Torah Anytime if you're interested in learning more about the art of fundraising. And he actually tells a story that I actually checked it out with him this morning just to verify it. I want to say it accurately. So I told Greg this story when he told me the value of listening. So I told Greg the following story. So Rav Isser Zalman Meltzer and Rav Aryeh Levine were 2 great righteous Jews who lived in Israel about 100 years ago, give or take. And there's a story goes as follows, that when Rav Isser Zalman Meltzer, this is not meant to be a criticism of Rav Isser Zalman, this is meant to show you the level of Rav Aryeh Levine, who was known as the Tzaddik of Yerushalayim. He basically said like this. So Rav Isser Zalman Meltzer, so they say when he would sit down to pay a shiva call, to comfort a mourner, so people knew he was incredibly busy. He only had 5 minutes. So people knew that Rav Isser Zalman would sit down for 5 minutes. He'd sit there, he'd give attention to the mourners, and then he'd get up and leave. Rav Aryeh Levine, the tzaddik of Yerushalayim, he also would sit down for 5 minutes to pay a shiva call. But he said, Rav Isser Zalman apparently said, the difference between myself and Rav Aryeh Levine is when I sit down for 5 minutes, they know that I'm leaving in 5 minutes. When Rav Aryeh Levine sits down for 5 minutes, so they know that he's also only staying for 5 minutes, but in those 5 minutes, he has all the time in the world. I love that story, right? Rav Aryeh Levine's also only staying for 5 minutes, but in those 5 minutes, he has all the time in the world, right? It communicates this beautiful idea that right now I am here with the group of people that's here, right? I'm nowhere else. I am fully here. I'm not with my phone that's buzzing every 5 seconds. I'm not distracted by other things. I'm fully here. So when you're sitting with somebody, if you don't have to take every meeting, but once you're already taking a meeting, so you give the person the respect that you're there. And particularly if you're trying to ultimately do business with the person who's sitting across from you. So you want to get them to talk. You want to ask them thoughtful questions. You want to open up the conversation, maybe open-ended questions. I have a podcast. It's called the JPP, the Jewish Philanthropy Podcast, where I have the honor to build relationships with very, very high net worth individuals, people who have succeeded in various realms of business. And I get to talk to them. Really, the most valuable part of the podcast, full disclosure, is the pregame and the postgame, right? It's not the actual game that's released to the audience that you may hear. It's actually the conversation and the rapport I build with them before and afterwards, and then subsequent. That's maybe not always recorded, but in that sense also, like I often start off by asking an open-ended question. Tell me about, after I introduce them and I read their bio, I say, okay, very nice. Tell me about yourself in your own words, right? Give people the space, the opportunity to share with you what's important to them, and make sure you're giving them feedback. Make sure that not only are you grasping it and you're getting that information, but that you're actually showing them that you're hearing what they're saying, right? It's something that's so crucial. I was at a fundraising conference last week, and one of the major donors at the Orthodox Union where I work, and he's going to actually be the next chairman of the board of the Orthodox, next president of the Orthodox Union. So he shared a story with all the fundraisers, 60, 70 plus fundraisers. He said that he told a fundraiser the previous year that he doesn't want a gift for his gift. Like sometimes somebody gives you a nice donation, you want to give them a gift. So he said, I don't want a gift. And then next year, the guy sent him a gift again. So he stopped giving his gift because he said he's clearly not listening to me, right? It's such a small thing that can make such a difference, right? If we show people that we're listening to them, that we care about them, this is something that's a real game changer, okay? This isn't the most appropriate. I'm going to say this I'll say this with the caveat that I don't mean any offense by this whatsoever. It's meant as a joke, but it just communicates the idea in an effective way. But please don't be offended if it's not your speed. I give you the caveat that it's not for everybody, but I just say it against my better judgment that I once heard that a speech is supposed to be like a mini skirt. What does it mean? A speech is supposed to be like a mini skirt, meaning it's long enough to cover the subject, but short enough to keep it interesting. So I always find that to be, whether you like or don't appreciate the humor of it, but I think it's meant to communicate this idea that I'm going to start. I actually was telling my wife this morning, I'm going to start telling people when I interview them that you don't have to like spill the whole can of beans in the first 5 minutes. Sometimes I ask that open-ended question, and the guy goes on for 20 minutes, and I don't want to be rude and interrupt him, but I think there needs to be a social cognition that there's two people. And I have to be sensitive to this right now also, in the sense that, you don't want to turn people off and you don't want to go off topic. And I was taught many years ago, better to say less than say more. The person wants to learn more, they'll follow up with a subsequent question. You don't have to kind of like vomit at them, kind of all the information off the top. So this is just like kind of basic etiquette in terms of communication, right? That we have to, and when you're asking people for advice, I've had frequently the beautiful phenomenon of building out my LinkedIn connections, and it's growing by leaps and bounds. And it's interesting. People often will text me. Actually, somebody here, I had a lovely conversation with him this morning. We talked about some collaborations, and it's appreciated. It's interesting though, like I had a guy reach out to me a few weeks ago, kind of like cold, and he asked me for a meeting, and I agreed to do it. And the guy was like going on and on and on and on and on. It's like, if you're asking somebody for their time, like be cognizant that they're doing you a favor and they're giving you their time, right? They don't know what exactly you want from them. If you want something very specific, it's good to be specific. If you want to just begin a rapport, keep it brief, keep it succinct. Don't abuse people's time if they're giving you the courtesy of speaking to you, particularly in the middle of a busy day. So that's something I think that's essential. I want to talk a little bit about mentors, if I may. So I mentioned earlier, I gave a shout out to Rabbi Yitz Greenman. So it's very important to have mentors, right? Mentors are also a relationship, right? We're always looking to find people. I think I just hit the, what's it called? The Siri something. I think okay, let's turn this off. Good. So I think in terms of mentorship, I think it's crucial. So I have a new book, and I appreciate Morty gave me this forum a little bit also for a little bit of shameless self promotion. So my new book is it's like out actually today. So it's called Together Again: Reimagining the Relationships That Anchor Our Lives. I was fortunate in 2016 to write my first book, which is called We're Almost There: Living with Patience, Perseverance, and Purpose. That book is about dealing with challenges in life, and I share some of my own personal challenges. It took me many years to find a spouse and to get married. I got married when I was 31 years old. I had my firstborn child was born with Down syndrome. Again, these are not topics for today's discussion. Maybe there'll be a different forum to share. But I wrote a book in 2016, published by Mosaica Press, on those topics. And this week, my second book is actually going to be in bookstores. If it's not already in bookstores, they'll be in Jewish bookstores next week. It's already available on Amazon. It's available through me directly if you're interested. And I'll be sharing a lot more about that in the coming weeks and months. But in that book, so the very first section of the book, in terms of the impetus for writing that book, was the idea that during COVID, I was very much cut off, as most of us were. And I began in that forum to put pen to paper and think about kind of critical people in my life. And if I'm granted the schus, the privilege to continue living and go back to regular life one day, I want to reimagine those relationships and go about those relationships in a different fashion than I had previously. I want to deepen them. I want to improve upon them. And the first section of the book, I talk about mentors and teachers. And I actually talk about some of the important mentors in my life. I talk about different rabbinical figures. But the main point I want to share here is that mentorship can be near and afar. And I've heard this from a lot of my very impressive guests on my podcast, that not every mentor has to be somebody that you know personally or that you've developed a personal relationship with. So I'm going to give you right now what I consider to be a slam dunk tip in terms of success in business. I think this is huge. If you walk away just with this and nothing else today, I think presumably it was worth your while, because I think this is really the most valuable thing that I have to share today. So I mentioned I wrote a book in 2016. So I went to, they had some forum, like some organization had an opportunity where you basically get to do a 2-minute pitch of new authors come and they get to do a 2-minute pitch of their book. So I went with like 60 authors to this, I forgot what it was called, Jewish Book Council, so I think JBC, and we all got to pitch our books. And at this forum, so I did my pitch, I did an okay job, but there was one guy there who stood out. Okay, this guy was like off the charts. He had a charisma, he had a dynamism, and everybody was like flocking to him afterwards. I think he got like 60 book invites. The idea is like you pitch your book and then you get invited to speak based on your book. So I think I got like 4 or 5. This guy, he rocked it. Who was this guy? His name is Jesse Itzler. I recommend you check him out on social. Jesse, Jesse Itzler. So Jesse Itzler is a Jewish boy who grew up in Roslyn, New York. He's married to a lady named Sarah Blakely. Sarah Blakely is pretty famous. She's actually the founder of Spanx. She's one of the first female billionaires in the world, self-made female billionaires. She built a company called Spanx based out of Atlanta. She basically she couldn't pass. She says the way she says it. I took the LSAT. I was a lawyer for many years. I know she always says I couldn't pass the LSAT. I mean, there's no such thing as passing and failing the LSAT. I guess she meant was she didn't do well enough to get accepted to law school, but she had this idea of how to make pantyhose more comfortable, and she went door to door, and she started off with $5,000, and she built it into Blackstone. Bought her company for she's a very, very impressive lady. Okay, so that's Sarah Blakely. So Sarah Blakely is married to a guy named Jesse Itzler. Jesse Itzler was also sleeping on couches when he was in his 20s. He's all about performance and pushing yourself and growth. And he founded a bunch of companies. NetJets, I think, is a private plane. Private planes are much more common today than they were back then. But he founded NetJets, which I think was bought by Warren Buffett. They're co-owners of the Atlanta Hawks basketball team, so on and so forth. So I met Jesse at this conference. Jesse was pitching his first book at the time, which was a book. He basically invited this guy, David Goggins, who was a famous guru. He was a Marine. He's called the toughest man on earth. And he basically invited Goggins to move into his house for 30 days and whip him into shape, and to make him harder, not soft, and to impact all the different aspects of his business. So Jesse and I, honestly, I built a little bit of a relationship with him. We stayed in touch. We kind of fallen out of touch, but I follow him on social. I took some of the courses that he offers over the years. He has this whole thing called Build Your Life Resume. But his big thing, and he actually just posted about this today. His big thing is everybody should have a hot 50 or a hot 25. What the heck is a hot 50? What the heck is a hot 25? So he has this concept that everybody should have a list. Keep it simple. I don't know, make it a hot 10. Everybody should have a list of the 10 most important people in your business life that can move the needle for you in the coming year. Right? Many of us here are Jewish, so in the Jewish New Year, so the Jewish New Year is only 2 months away, right? January is still a few months away, 2023, but certainly Jewish New Year is very soon, right? So you can kind of take this idea on a Jewish calendar. You basically say, who are the 10 people in my stratosphere, in my universe, who can help me move the needle in the coming year? And what you say to yourself is as follows. Every quarter, so 4 times a year in the coming year, I'm going to reach out to that person. I'm not going to ask for something. I'm not going to ask to sit down with that person. I'm just going to add value. I'm just going to stay on their radar, what he calls top of mind. I actually think this is fascinating because in my business, I have people that I'm kind of long game people with, short game people with, pre-existing relationships. The relationships are, you have a whole pipeline of different stages of relationships. Anybody who's in sales, whether it's for-profit, not-for-profit, can relate to this. So there are people that are kind of their long-term goals. I recently was in Chicago. I met with a guy who's a multi-billionaire. It's a fascinating story how I met him and where I met him. It's not for now, but it's like I was like getting very frustrated with this interaction because like I'm asking for help with I made a mistake. Like I felt like I may not get another chance with him again, so I was like kind of like it was overkill. I was asking for A, B, C, D. And he would say no to A. I'd go back to B. Would try a week later. I realized, like, what am I? I'm Meshugana. Like, relax. Like, it's getting a little too excited. The guy was a multi-billionaire, right? Like, just relax, David. Take a deep breath. Take a chill pill. Long game, right? You can ask anyone on my fundraising team. They always say David is the king of saying long game, right? It's you have to be patient. And I took a different tack now with this guy. Every little bit I see something that he will appreciate, I email it to him. Why? Add value, top of mind. I'm not asking for anything. I'm building a relationship. I'm building a rapport. I think it's something that's so critical. It's so essential, right? You have to be authentic. You have to be sincere. You have to be real. We all make mistakes. I presented at this fundraising conference last week, and I got up in front of all these professional fundraisers, many of them who thought I was a pretty good fundraiser, and I told them this like terribly embarrassing story that happened to me this year. How I like really blew it with also like a very, very substantial donor. And like, look, we all make mistakes because we get anxious because we lose faith at times. We kind of like, we press. When you're pressing, you're not in a good place. So it's so important sometimes just to take a chill pill, relax, reorient, move on to the next person, deep breath, think about how you're coming across to the other person. It's also very important sometimes just to I'm going to wind down here, just another few minutes, and then I want to open up the floor to questions and comments. I think it's so important also to get feedback. I went yesterday to Atlantic Beach, which is an area that's close to where I live. A lot of high net worth people vacation there in the summer. And I went to somebody who I'm friendly with, and we sat by his pool and we relaxed. And I asked for his feedback. I asked for his advice. I asked it was very eye-opening to me to hear clearly from him that I thought I was adding values in a certain way, and I really wasn't. I was overselling my value. I think it's important. Sometimes we get out of whack in terms of sometimes we undersell our value, sometimes we oversell our value. We always have to kind of recalibrate and get constructive feedback from people that we trust. It's not always going to be fuzzy and warm and the feedback we want to hear, but it's valuable to get a sense of where we really do add value, where we don't, to kind of understand better as we move forward with other people, to understand that maybe we don't add as much value as we think we do, or maybe that person has a lot of other resources to get what you think you're adding. So these are all just important tips and keys. I'm going to end with this one thing right now, and then I'm happy to open the floor for questions, comments, discussion, and then if there's a need for me I'll probably add a lot more just through the conversation and through Q&A. I don't think there's a need to overdo it right now. I don't want to violate my own rule, but I'll just end with this idea. We find ourselves in the Jewish tradition, we find ourselves now in the period of the 9 days, right? We're very, very close to what's called Tisha B'Av. This Shabbos technically is already the 9th of Av. We observe it on Sunday, the 10th of Av. So we're really, different opinions about when exactly is the week, how you define the week where Tisha B'Av kind of falls out this year. But in the sense, it's a time of intense mourning. It's a time where we come very close to this idea of churban, of destruction, of loss. And I think it's important to recognize that the first temple was destroyed ultimately because of the cardinal three iniquities that were committed by the Jewish people at that time, that they murdered, that they were involved in illicit sexuality, they were involved in the idol worship. But ultimately, despite doing, and we know that you can violate the entire Torah ultimately when a person's life is at stake, except for those three. Those three, you have to basically sacrifice yourself and not violate those three. That's how critical they are. And yet, despite that, when despite those three iniquities being committed, the temple was rebuilt only a short 70 years later, like basically a traditional lifespan nowadays. The temple was already rebuilt in the next generation. In contrast to that, the second temple we know was destroyed because of baseless hatred, because of sinas chinam. And ultimately, sadly, we're still in Golos, we're still in exile because of that baseless hatred, which teaches you that basically baseless hatred is seemingly even more of an extreme iniquity than the cardinal three, which we know you basically have to give up your life for. So the idea I'm communicating, it's a well-known idea, and that is it's found in Gemara Yuma and other places, the idea that a person has to understand and recognize that destructive, harmful relationships, it's very hard to get those back, right? It's very hard to rebuild. We know this from our personal relationships. I have a lot of experience working with individuals, with couples, over my many years in many different realms of life. In the rabbinate, I spent 18 years as a pulpit rabbi in different communities. Like you can't get it back. And many of us are in the business of relationships. When I was talking to Greg this morning, Greg happens to be like a private investor. He doesn't really deal with relationships so much, interestingly enough. But I think many of us, yours truly, amongst them, our businesses are very much built on our relationships, and our business really is like we are our business, like we are our product. And if we don't have good relationships, we're going nowhere very, very quickly. So just very succinctly, just to review, so I talked a little bit at the beginning about the three levels of relationships dynamics that we want to transition from transactional to deeper, to emotional, to partners, to what we call advancement, right? Where we're giving great pleasure to the other, and it's their greatest pleasure to help us, and they're super responsive because they feel like they're one with us in terms of the work that's being done, whether it's for profit, not for profit. We talked about not getting too carried away with the I, right? That on the one hand, yes, like we have to have confidence. The world is my oyster. I have a lot to contribute, but we have to understand there's another I sitting across from me. There's the ani, there's the individual, there's the communal, there's using the wisdom that hopefully we're gleaning here a little bit in terms of how to bridge the two together. We talked a lot about this idea that how do we listen, right? Rav Yisroel Meltzer and Rav Aryeh Levine, that when you're there for those 5 minutes, but in those 5 minutes you have all the time in the world, right? This idea of listening. I didn't mention this, but I'll say this right now also. The idea that what's the difference between a rabbi and a rebbe, right? When a rabbi speaks, everybody in the room thinks that the rabbi is talking to the other guy. When a rebbe speaks, everybody in the room thinks that the rebbe is speaking directly to them. Not to criticize rabbis or rebbes, but the point is that the rebbe is somebody that you feel the person really cares about you. You're going to listen to them, right? Because you feel that they are invested in you. I told the story about the fundraiser who came to my house, and he took down every detail about my life, and he retained it, and he came back. I told the joke about the miniskirt, about, cover your bases, but don't overdo it, right? Don't vomit on the people. And finally, we talked about mentors. You can have mentors from near, mentors from afar. You don't always have to have the personal relationship. You can also glean from them via social media, other forums, their books, their wisdom. A person's one person. They don't have time. They can't possibly have time for everything and everybody. But hopefully, if they disseminate their content in different ways, you can gain from it. You can view them as a mentor, even though there isn't that personal touch. And we talk about this idea from Jesse Itzler, the idea of your hot 50, your hot 25, your hot 10, to make sure that you're constantly in constant contact with the people that can move the needle for you, but to be patient, not to push. We ended with this idea about the destruction of the temple, the period that we're involved in right now, the intense mourning and the appreciation, the understanding that ultimately it's all about relationships. And that the ben adam l'chavero aspect, the interpersonal piece, is sometimes much more crucial, even in the eyes of God, than the ben adam hamakom. God can forgive, when you violate Him in some way, the cardinal averos. But what pains a parent the most is when their children don't get along, and this is something that we can take forward as we progress out of this period into the period of Tu B'Av, which is a celebratory period, the period of Tshuva, of Elul, of Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Yom Noraim, Sukkot, celebratory. We're really now we're really on a trajectory now of kind of strengthening connections And I would encourage you also, if you have the opportunity, it's exciting for me, my new book, Together Again, just came out. You can go on Amazon, you can get both of the books. And I really share a lot of insights in terms of how to strengthen relationships in 2022 post the pandemic. So I look forward to interacting with all of you and getting your feedback and building deeper relationships. At this point, I'm going to pass on to Morty or whoever wants to ask questions. I'm happy to do what I can to try to be responsive.
That was amazing, David. I hope you all enjoyed. We do have a few questions. We'll keep them really, really short and brief, and maybe we'll open up to discussion. I do want to do breakout rooms. So everyone, right after this, we're going to do breakout rooms. We're going to split you all up into about rooms of about 5 people. Just introduce yourself, speak what you do. Use the advice we just learned. Listen to the other person. Be curious. Get to know them. These are all people who are, if you're spending your day here, it's the middle of the day, it's the middle of a work day. You're coming here to grow. I greatly appreciate your time. I know Rabbi Dovid Cohen appreciates your time as well. There's a lot of things you could be doing right now, and the fact that you are here with us means a lot, and we want to make sure that you get actual value from it. Obviously, the content was amazing. I hope you took some notes, and we'll share this replay if you want to go back to any of those points. You're welcome to in the replay. But we also want to make sure that you're going to make some connections and give you access to new resources, new opportunities, and that happens through connecting with other people who are ambitious, who want to grow. If you're coming here, it shows me that you're the type of person who I want to get to know, and I think the rest of you guys want to get to know as well. So just to make it real quick, let me actually add meat to this. See if I can do that. Can you guys see me now?
I try to be responsive on the chat. So some people that wrote on the Zoom chat some questions, I already respond to them. Everybody can see, I think.
Can you guys see me? Awesome, you guys can see me. Cool. So this is working. This little setup I've been playing with. I'm glad you guys can see me. And basically, I'm going to ask David some questions now, and then also David Cohen, later in the LinkedIn chat, people were asking a couple of questions, so it is live on LinkedIn, so you can check my profile to see that as well. So let's go ahead and pull up the questions. We have, what advice do you have for being surrounded by negative family members? So let's just keep it like that. So we'll try to keep the questions short, but what advice do you have for being around negative family members?
So it could go beyond family. I guess the part about family must be because it's harder to evade family members than it is to evade negative people in general. You want to stay away from negativity. I think it's so important. We live in a pressurized world. We all have. Sometimes we could have negative thoughts that creep into our minds. Sometimes we don't always have the utmost confidence. Sometimes people say things to us that can get us down. In general, you want positive energy. Right. I'm a big fan of Gary Vaynerchuk. If anybody here is familiar with Gary V, he's kind of VaynerMedia. He's very successful in terms of marketing, and he has a podcast, very brief insights, and he talks a lot about love and positivity. And I think there's always going to be haters. There's always going to be naysayers. You got to get these people out of your way and shut them down and stay away from them. I have people in my own life, in my own family, extended family, they're like Debbie Downers, they always know how to kill a moment. They always know how to say the wrong thing. You can't take it personally. You can't take it too seriously. If it's people that are hard to avoid in your life, again, you have to limit negativity. You have to limit negativity if it's really close to you. So that might be more of a personal discussion in terms of how to maneuver or how to work with a negative spouse or things like that. But in general, I think it's important to be around. You have to be around people that help you thrive. Right, that are going to support you, that are going to give you honest feedback. Frankly, there's a peeve of mine. I hate when people don't feel comfortable giving feedback. Like I've been in situations in my life many times where I needed feedback and people were withholding the feedback because they were afraid to offend. But sometimes, that's also doing the person a disservice. Sometimes showing you care about somebody is giving them the feedback that they need to succeed. How you say it is critical, right? How you present it. You say it in a way that there's some people that say negative feedback in a way that they think tough love motivates. Some people that really does motivate. Some people, fear tactics turn them off. You really have to always be cognizant of who you're talking to. But in terms of the specific question, in terms of negative family members, so it has to be neutralized. It could be through conversation. It could be through avoidance. It could be through a lot of different ways. A good therapist, but there's enough negativity in the world that you certainly want to do your best to not surround yourself in your immediate vicinity with such people.
Thank you. That was a great answer. The next question is a little similar. This one's a little bit more difficult, and it's what advice do you have for being married to a spouse that has a negative outlook on creating a better life? For example, they laugh about personal growth, or they don't believe in getting help from a coach.
That's a hard question to answer. I mean, no, really. I mean, you have to, you know, I work with a lot of couples, and you have to kind of unpack kind of why they get married to begin with, where they were when they got married, where they are now, how long they're married for. Sometimes I also do this. I work one-on-one with different parts of the couple at times because it's important to isolate and to really dig deep with the couple who is extremely negative to understand what is it about them. Some people just it's just their DNA, right? They've been criticized so much in their youth, and I'm a big believer in terms of, the environment we grew up in impacts the next generation, and oftentimes it's not a fault of that person. It's just they were surrounded by such negativity or so much criticism that just built in their nature, right? They say that it's pretty well known that people that were abused tend to be abusers, right? It's very much kind of it's built into a certain. You would think it should be the opposite. It's counterintuitive. If I was abused, the last thing I want to do is abuse somebody else. But sadly, if you're abused, I'm using a stark example, that becomes your reality, right? And then you aren't so hesitant to then pass it on to others. You don't really realize there's something wrong with that type of behavior. So again, it's very hard to give general information about a specific person without knowing that person, without kind of really understanding. But I think everybody ultimately wants to be good and do good. Sometimes we just lack the tools. Sometimes there's a fear of getting the help. I think thankfully, we live in a world today where the stigmatization of working with a coach or with a therapist has really gone out the window. I think it's much more commonplace. It's much more openly discussed. I have a very good friend. He unfortunately passed away. He's my very good friend's father, but he used to always say that being a therapist is a terrible job. He was a great therapist. But he used to say that the problem is that nobody will, they see you on the street, they run the other way. Who's going to recommend you? Like nobody wants you to know that they're seeing a therapist. That's changed dramatically nowadays. People have given me call. You need to call this person. Like they'll give you the card. It's a very different world in which we live. People who are bitter and are sad, you have to feel badly for them, and you have to try to help them get the support they need because clearly there's something holding them back. That they could live a much better version of themselves if they're able to get past that. But again, it's not. I'm not. I don't mean to make light of the question because it can be very difficult at times to overcome. It's very challenging. It can take many years to deal with that.
I think that was a great answer. I think we're gonna wrap it up. I want to get to the breakout rooms because there's no time for more questions. We're gonna get right to the breakout rooms. I think a lot of it comes also down to understanding what it is they want. Obviously, I'm a big fan of personal growth. I have coaches. I spend a lot of money on that. And one thing I realized is that you can't push your beliefs on other people. And I think in marriage, people do that a lot. Like if you love personal development and your spouse doesn't, don't push that on them. I think people do that oftentimes. You go to an event, you learn something, you watch a video, and you're all excited about it, and you want to tell your friends, you want to tell your family members, you want to tell your spouse because they're the closest people to you, and you want to share it. But oftentimes it comes across that you're trying to help me, you're trying to change me, or there's something wrong with me, and many times it can come across the wrong way. Even though generally you may be just excited to share, you want to talk about it, but you need to be careful not to push your beliefs or the things that you're going on to someone else. If they're not ready for it, timing is very important. Even if you have an amazing thing to share, if you say it to the wrong person at the wrong time, there may not be the right time, right? We have a lot of value to share, but I'm not going to go up to someone on the subway and say, hey, I can help you go. There's a time and there's a place to share value, to talk. You want people you want to make sure people's listening is open. Make sure they want to listen to what you have to say. Don't be speaking to someone who does not want to listen to what you're saying. And then I think that's an important part. Make sure that you understand what it is that they want. And if that's not what they want, maybe it's not something to bring up.
Morty happens to be, I'll just add, it's an amazing point, what you're saying. Timing is everything, right? Timing is everything. I once heard from a very wealthy man that he got up at a very famous yeshiva dinner, and he basically said that, why are you making a big fuss about me? All I had in life was great timing. I came after my father. That was his comment. So timing is everything. But I think I've seen many times couples, we're talking a little bit about marriage here, couples will come to me and they'll say, the husband will say, my wife is impossible. Can you fix her? And I'll often say to the husband, I can't fix her. We can't control her. All we can do is fix you.
Yep.
And that's very hard to hear. you're not the one who's creating all the problems. Not exactly true, right? It's not exactly true. It always takes two to tango. But ultimately, even if you're not, Rav Shlomo Volba, who was a great thinker in Jerusalem, my eldest son is actually named after him. This idea that you have to realize that we all contribute to the problem on some level. If something's not working, we're all contributors, and we have to always take stock of what role we play in the dynamic and how we can at least fix the part that we do control, as opposed to the part that we, unfortunately don't control, which is another person.
That's amazing. Well said. If you're always trying to deal with things you can control, you're not going to live a very happy life. People are saying the government, COVID, those things are not in your control. If you're going to be obsessing over, what's going on in the outside world, what the government's doing, what COVID's doing, you'll always be you'll never be in control. You'll never be happy. If you focus on what you can control, yes, the government may be crazy. Yes, COVID may be ravaging, but what can you do right now? Focus on what you can control, which is your actions, your mindset. Focus on what you can control. And there's people that made a lot of money during COVID, there's people that lost a lot of money during COVID. It's what they did with the situation that determined the outcome, not the situation. So don't try to control the outside world. You can't. You can't control what happens outside, but you can control what happens inside. So that's a great point. Let's do some breakout rooms. I am very excited to do this. We're going to split you guys up into, we'll do 5 rooms. So it'll be about 5 people each. Do that now. Real quick before we do that, everyone turn your cameras on and let's get a picture, because this is always the fun part. Let's get a picture with everyone here. Everyone get your cameras on. We can get a quick group picture. Come on, Mickey, let's see you. Sam, who else is there? Mikhail. Let's go. Let's get a picture, everyone. All right, you guys can also feel free to take screenshots. You're welcome to. This is just for fun. Everyone look good, smile. There we go. Be happy. That was an amazing speech. All right. Awesome. We're gonna do the breakout rooms now, and yeah, I'm very excited. What we can do is, if you guys want, after the breakout rooms, David, do you have a few minutes? Do you want to hang out a little bit? So after the breakout rooms, you guys want to come back and ask David questions. Obviously, if you guys are busy, I totally understand. We try to do this for an hour. It's already been an hour. But if you guys want to extend a little bit, we'll do breakout rooms for 5-10 minutes. Chat, enjoy, get to know each other. And if you want to discuss some of the topics that David just mentioned, you could. If you want to introduce yourself, discuss your business a little bit, feel free. You guys are adults. We're not going to, tell you exactly what to say and how to do it. The idea is to teach you the concepts that you can go and apply and make some business. So meet people, have fun. All right.
How do we split up the rooms?
I'm doing that right now.
That's amazing.
All right, there we go. The rooms are starting now. Everyone click join room. You should get a pop-up. Do you guys see that, to join the breakout rooms? Awesome. David, you're still here. So David, if you want to, if you want to just join on your, would you like to join a breakout room, or you want to stay on a chat? What would you like to do? Would you like to just join everyone else, or talk to me?
You tell me whatever you want me to do.
So either you can join a room. You obviously have that option, because I know you're joined on Zoom as well. Or you can stay in chat. I'm curious actually just to think, what did you think of this kind of setup that we just did?
Fascinating. Really cool. It's great.
We're still innovating. I love what you said about feedback. I would love your feedback. You always do a lot of this. By the way, we're live right now, so we're on LinkedIn. People see us. You want to say hi to LinkedIn? We are still live on LinkedIn. People do see us, so we could have a more open discussion afterwards. But I guess for the people on LinkedIn that are not able to join the breakout rooms, is there anything else you would like to share or want to know about this community that we're doing here? Anything you want to share to LinkedIn?
I'm looking here.
Oh yeah, if you want to join a LinkedIn chat, you actually go onto LinkedIn. Why don't you just go to LinkedIn, click on my profile, and you should be able to join the live. Do you see that?
1 second, I'm going to pull it up. Speed up on the technology. Here we go.
We have 13 people viewing on LinkedIn. So that's pretty good. We had about 22 at one point, and 13 are still on.
Okay, Mordechai Longer. Okay.
Oh, Yaakov asked about the join room. So the join room is for Zoom only. If you want to join the Zoom, you can register at yourbusinessanytime.com, and you can register to join the Zoom room. On LinkedIn, we don't have a breakout room feature, unfortunately. So, do you see the LinkedIn, the chat, the live? I think I tagged you, so you should.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Okay, cool.
It works with a little bit of a delay on LinkedIn. I see that. Okay, it's like Facebook. I know how it
Okay.
works. It's fine.
All good.
Cool.
Yeah. So very cool. Yeah, they're saying they don't see the join room. Does anyone on LinkedIn have any questions for Rabbi Dovid Cohen that you would like to ask? I like this actually. We could open it up for LinkedIn discussions while they're in the vacant ones. We could do a little LinkedIn panel. This is actually a cool concept. I didn't even think about this, but innovations.
I see Bitzal was talking. Am I not in the room? Is that what happened? I leave the room.
Yeah, you might be in the room.
Okay, I'm back in the main session now.
Okay, yeah, now I see two of you in the main session. Cool.
Somebody Mordechai's iPhone. That's you. Okay.
That's me. Yeah.
Oh,
I joined
cool.
my phone as
Fine.
well.
Are we still on LinkedIn or no? Now we're off LinkedIn.
We are still on LinkedIn. We are still live. I asked them if they have any questions. First off, I just want to really thank you for coming out. You know, obviously we've been speaking on and off the past few months. It was really nice to kind of get to know you a little better. I feel a lot closer to you now than before. I got to see you. I got to get to know you a little bit. Hear some of your stories. I'm going to buy your book and I will read it probably within the next week or so. For anyone on LinkedIn, how do they get your book? You want to just give a quick.
Thank you.
Because one person asked, Naomi B asked about your book. She says she's very intrigued. So how do they get your book?
So you can either go to Amazon right now and just both my books, but my most recent book called Together Again. Just go Rabbi Dovid M Cohen Together Again on Amazon, and you can order it right now, and it'll be delivered within days. My other book is on Amazon as well. The book should be out in all Jewish bookstores by next week, the latest. Or you can email me directly at info@rabbidovidmcohen.com, and I can also directly send you a copy of the book. So any of those options, basically Jewish bookstore, Amazon, or info@rabbidovidmcohen.com, and hopefully within the next week you will have a copy for yourself, if not sooner.
Amazing. And I'm going to just do this. If you guys want, you can message him on LinkedIn. He's pretty responsive on LinkedIn. So if you guys want, I would say definitely follow him, connect with him. He's a very friendly guy. Connect with him. Definitely send him a message. Introduce yourself. Tell him you saw him on the conversation, and he'll be happy to either get you a copy or just chat with you. So definitely reach out to him. I hope you're okay with that, but I feel like you would have no issue.
Yeah, that's fine.
So definitely connect with him.
Thank you.
We do have a question on LinkedIn, so let's pull that up.
Okay.
What was the best thing you learned as a rabbi as opposed to private world working? So what is the best thing you learned as a rabbi?
That's a great question. You learn so much about people. You get to be with them in their most intimate moments, both happy and sad. Now, when you work in the business world, it tends to be pretty transactional in terms of the levels we spoke about. There could be very deep relationships that are developed between colleagues and even between clients and servicers of those clients over many years. I'm not saying no, but I think it's different in the sense that when you're actually with people when they're at a funeral or when they're at a wedding or when they have a circumcision of a child, whatever it is, the life cycle. So that is transformational, right? You also have multi-generational relationships. Often you get to be connected to the children, the parents, the grandparents, right? You get to hopefully over the cycle, if you're a rabbi in a community long enough, you really get to interact with all the different levels within the community, and that's also something that I think is very powerful. I think it's like you can build very strong relationships in the for-profit world as well. Absolutely, and you have investors and GPs and LPs and people who are super close and tight and make a lot of money together, and that's beautiful and that's wonderful, and partners that really are amazing. But ultimately, I think when you work in communal work, when you work in not-for-profit work, so there's a different level of connection. Again, there's trade-offs. There's pros and cons in working in both universes. I've done both. I'm familiar with the pros and cons of each. But if you're asking specifically about the beauty of being a spiritual mentor to people and being part of their lives, So I think that is what attracts many people and many of my friends who went into that work. I think they just enjoy the ability to really touch people in their most crucial moments in life. That's something that I think is incomparable in other realms and other professions.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing. We do have one more question over here. Oh, I like this one. Any funny fundraising stories? Any funny fundraising stories you want to share? I'm sure you have many, so I guess pick your top. Or what's one that's like, that's a funny story. I gotta share that.
I have a lot of stories. I don't know if I want to try to think what's like a funny one that I'd be comfortable sharing. I'll share one actually that wasn't funny, and it's actually
You're
wasn't
laughing,
funny.
so I'm sure
When
it was great.
when I was a newbie fundraiser, I'm still a relatively new fundraiser. Like, because I've done a lot of other things, I've only been professionally focused on fundraising for about full time for about 5 years now. But when I first started in that 5-year time period, so I called a pre-existing relationship, was very financially successful. But we weren't like, I always thought we had a good relationship, but we weren't like super close. And I called him up one day, and I guess I got him at a really bad time. So I asked him if I could speak to him about my relationship, about my cause, about my organization. And he was like, Rabbi, I'm not interested right now. And I guess I just pushed a little too hard. I said to him, oh, come on, just let me come and like share with you for a few minutes, like what I'm doing. And he got like super angry. This guy, he was like, I can pick for myself what organizations I want to support. Thank you very much. And he hung up the phone on me. So it's not a funny story, but why am I sharing this story? Because my wife knows that till this day, every time I call somebody in a fundraising context, I still feel that little pit in my stomach. It could be a guy who loves me, who's super nice to me, but I always have like this remnant of that initial conversation, which was like probably the first few months I was working as a fundraiser. And this guy like hung up on me, and I'm always afraid that someone's going to either yell at me or hang up on me. I can't get over that to this day. Like, there's always that gnawing feeling, and it's like, it's so senseless and it's baseless, but that will stick with me for the rest of my life.
First off,
somebody's gonna
that belief you just said is, I mean, that would qualify as a limiting belief. You said a few things there. You said, I can't get over it. It will stick with the rest of my life. Those are things that you believe. However, they're not necessarily true. It is possible to get over it. It is possible you could forget about it. Will you? I don't know. But we often believe things, and our story is that's how it is. But you do have the ability to get over it if you really want to. It doesn't sound like it's holding you back. So it doesn't sound like you have to get over it. Again, we all believe things that aren't serving us. Some do, some don't serve us. But I generally tend to, that's some unwarranted advice. I hope you're okay with it. But generally, people limit themselves what they can or can't do. I think it's totally possible, but it's definitely I could see why it's sticking with you.
100%. Yeah, it's 100% accurate what you're saying. It could be that it even limits me a little bit. It could be a little bit it limits me. It's something that it's not there perpetually, but it's something that sometimes like it does lurk in the background. Again, it hasn't limited me enough that I've really had to like work on unearthing it and eliminating it. But it is interesting. It is something interesting that is definitely beneath the surface on some level. Which I think the other piece of it, you make an excellent point that sometimes we have to eradicate the limiting beliefs. But at the same time, it's also important to recognize on the flip side of that is that we have to, sometimes it's good that we don't forget certain things because it also, there's a lesson there in terms of tactfulness and understanding kind of when you're pushing too hard, going to the core of what I spoke about a little bit today. I think it's important also as well that when things don't go the way we want them to, we have to kind of assess, is there veracity in the response of the other person? I may not want to have experienced that, but it's still important at times to take stock and understand kind of why we're triggering the response that we've triggered in another person. So there's a lot to unpack there in that story. It's not really a funny story, but it's funny for me because here I am 5 years later, I'm still talking about it on some level. So it certainly made an impact.
That is awesome. So first off, thank you for sharing that. That's actually very cool. I just appreciate the vulnerability. A lot of people wouldn't want to share a story like that, but I appreciate you being vulnerable and giving me the people what they wanted and sharing a story like that. Thank you. That's very cool.
I've got nothing to hide.
Another great question from Yossi Blachman. What made you get into full-time fundraising? So how'd you get into this? What's the background story here?
Interesting. So I don't know if I like consciously decided to do it. What basically happened was I was in the rabbinate for I was a rabbi of a shul in Manhattan for 10 years. And when I was pivoting away from that opportunity, so I had done some fundraising in the context of being a communal rabbi. Every communal rabbi does, but it's certainly just a small piece of what I was doing. I had a knack for it for some reason. Like my grandfather was a fundraiser. I just was kind of in my blood. Like there's certain things just we have a certain natural. I like to interact with people. I like to listen to a lot of the things I spoke about. So I had to learn how to ask, and have the confidence to do that. But ultimately, it was something that was relatively natural. You find a lot of former rabbis going into fundraising. There is a certain overlap there. I actually went to work at the Orthodox Union as a synagogue consultant, which was a little bit more on point
I didn't know that
than
about you. That's cool.
fundraising. Yeah, there was a 2-year period where when I pivoted from the rabbinate, I was working with congregational boards and individual rabbis, getting their feedback, how the OU could service them better, and doing work in that, traveling to communities across the United States. It was very interesting work. But I also was doing some fundraising for Yachad, which is a division of the OU that services special needs children. I happened to be the parent of a special needs child, and I actually had been a volunteer for Yachad for many years, preceding my time at the OU. And there was just a confluence of events that at a certain juncture where I was looking to get a little bit more into fundraising, and Yachad at that time needed a full-time fundraiser. It just kind of fell into my lap, and I went with it. And then I worked very hard, like I do in many areas. Like if I don't feel I'm competent, I invest in, like you mentioned, Marty, you do as well. Like I invest in trying to get myself up to speed and trying to catch up and trying to get the skill set necessary. And I'm always learning, and I'm always trying to get better at my craft. And there's always ways to get better. Certainly on the margins, we can always improve. That's something we can even glean from professional athletes. The best ones are always pushing themselves, always pushing the envelope. So that's something that kind of fell into in that regard. And I've come to really appreciate the ability to raise the critical funds, to create the partnerships, to give people nachas, that they're able to make a difference in people's lives, to help the people that are in need. And I really see myself as a connector in so many ways, and it fits beautifully in terms of that. I remember the first time somebody referred to me as a fundraiser. I'm not getting into now whether that's a derogatory term or a positive term or different levels that I described earlier in terms of fundraiser, development professional, and advancement officer. But ultimately, I remember the first time I heard, for a long time, like a fundraiser, negative connotation. And then like a year ago, somebody called me a fundraiser. Actually, it was like, yeah, that's me. Like it was like it took some time till it kind of set in that was my new definition on some level, as opposed to, let's say, for many years, my definition was I'm a rabbi. It's not that I'm not a rabbi anymore, but I'm not like a practicing rabbi. I spend more of my time in the realm of development than I do now in the realm of rabbinics, in terms of teaching, in the realm of giving advice and counseling, although I do those things in different formats and platforms and contexts. But it's self-definition is important, and how we see ourselves, how we define ourselves. That's also a process and an evolution.
100%. That is very cool. I like that. Thank you for that answer. And great question. I'm glad they asked. That was really cool. I got to know a little bit more about you, which is very cool. One thing I like that you said before is that you're not a fundraiser per se. You're also a connector, right? Which I think is a very cool thing. And I think one thing you said rabbis go into fundraising is because rabbis have great relationships. A good rabbi knows how to connect to the olam. They know how to connect to their community, and it's about building the relationships. And when you have a good relationship with someone, the fundraising is really, again, it's what do they want. And people who are successful, they generally, yes, they want money, sure, but there's things they want more than money. And usually that's acknowledgement, that's impact, that's validation. They want to make a difference. They want to make sure they're leaving a legacy. They want to have a legacy. There's things they want. Yes, they want money too, but if you're able to show them enough respect, enough that really what like you said before, what they're doing is really making a difference, that's even more valuable to them than money, because these people are successful. They're making a lot of money as it is. They'll make more money. They really want to know that it's going to a good cause. They want to know that, again, it's about that relationship. What is it that they want? And oftentimes there's things people want more than money. People will trade money for a lot of things, for a vacation, for a time away. People will trade their money for, again, to help people they care about. So there are things that people want more than money. Sometimes it could be time. People might trade, people will trade the money for time. There's many things people want more than money. So I think that relationship, that connecting, what is it that they really want? And if you could find out what they really want, then I think that is not just, by the way, this is not advice for fundraising. This is advice for business. If you're in business and you're trying to work with a client, don't make it about you. Find out what your client wants. Find out what they're dealing with, what they want. And if you can hit it with if you could align your interests with theirs, and then you're clear on what they want, you will be very successful in business and fundraising. It's about building those relationships. And that's why this platform is free. We are investing a lot. We did an event 6 weeks ago, and we're investing a lot into all these different resources. People are like, why are you doing it for free? Why aren't you charging for it? And the reason is because we are investing in relationships. And I truly believe that's the best investment you can make, because the truth is that the return on that is infinite. It's priceless. There really is there's no price I could put on a relationship. And it's not transactional. If you want to do business properly, it's about building relationships, and those will last thousands of transactions. They'll send you referrals to do business with you. So I think investing in relationships, building those relationships, is the key to any business. So this nonprofit is truly designed that. It's about relationships. And I want to make sure that people in our community get the best value. So we want to bring in good speakers. You want to make sure the topics are on point, make sure the value is there. And also we want to hear the feedback. What is it that they want to see? What is it they want to do? What do they want to learn? And we want to help. So
I often, Marty, on that point that you made, I often ask either guests on my podcast, or I ask high net worth people that may be a donor. I'll often ask them, like, what is it about your life that people like myself don't necessarily understand? Meaning that, the way that a typical person, the way that a middle class person sees money is different than the way that an exceptionally wealthy person sees money. I think we often superimpose our assumptions about money onto them, and it's completely different. I was talking yesterday to a person who, basically said that, I said, do you need to work anymore financially? And he's like, no. I'm like, so what are you doing? So he said, I want to be busy. I want my kids to see a good model of work and effort and things like that. And he said also, it's interesting, he said, like, he's like, I don't need money to I have enough money to live the way you live. But he's like, but I'm not necessarily comparing myself to the way you live, right? My genre of people that I'm, in their social stratosphere is people who are billionaires, people who have, 10 different homes, people, whatever. So he's like, do I need to work if I want to be on those levels? I'm not judging whether he does or doesn't want to, but I'm just making the point that a lot of times, like, we're assessing a question based on our understanding of the variables, and we're talking, it's apples and oranges, right? Like me and Bill Gates talking about like money, it's like it's a different discussion, right? Like it's just for example, like it's you have to understand the terminology, you have to understand who you're talking to, you have to understand what they value. You said it beautifully in terms of understanding that money is not everything. Whether you have it or you don't have a lot of it, it's not everything. But whatever role it plays for each person, you do need to understand what it is, what that role is.
That is awesome. Well said. People are joining back in the Zoom. So thank you. Wow. I like that. And like I said, it's what people want. And that person, maybe he wants a 10 house. Maybe he wants to be at that same class. I don't know. But I think the key is when you're trying to work with someone is find out what the person wants. And don't make it about you. That's one of the biggest mistakes I think that oftentimes you'll make, is that they have this idea that they love it. It's the best. You might love it, but it's not about you. It's about the person you're selling to, about the customer, the client, the person you're building a relationship with, whoever it may be. Make sure that you're speaking to their listening. Make sure that whatever you're offering is what they want. We're going to go ahead and close the breakout rooms now.
Want to come see the action that's going on over here, see what's up. Morty, thank you so much for doing this. We're going to move on to the rest of the day, but I just wanted to thank you. Also, Rabbi Cohen, thank you so much for the value. I really enjoyed the reminder about feedback, being fully present, listening, the hot seat, like the hot 10. I'm going to go with the 10 first, and we'll see about the...
Me too, I like that. Let's go with the hot 10.
Yeah, but I appreciate it, and hopefully we'll connect on LinkedIn or something if we're not connected already. I know you might not be the biggest fan of LinkedIn.
No, I actually am a big fan. I didn't mean to say I'm not a big fan. All I meant to say was I find that sometimes I find a little off-putting the way that people are promoting themselves on LinkedIn. But I actually value the platform tremendously. I just wish sometimes people could tone it down a little bit about their, about all their prowess. I was like,
no, for sure. I was just joking around. And what was the podcast JPP? What was it called? Jewish philanthropy?
Yeah, thank you, Rez. It's called the JPP is the shorthand for it's called the Jewish Philanthropy Podcast. There are about 75 episodes so far.
And how often do you do them?
I release an episode every other week.
Okay.
So basically, every 14 days, there's an episode released. This past Monday, I just released an episode, which is actually, I thought it was actually Greg Zuckerman, who's a Wall Street Journal special reporter, who's a personal friend of mine. He actually interviewed me on my podcast about my new book, Together Again. So that's actually sometimes we do special interest episodes. So if you look through the podcast, you'll see most of them are with philanthropists, but at the beginning, I had some with fundraisers. At the beginning, I have just some special interest topics for a yard site or something like that. But predominantly, the focus is on the space of philanthropy, of giving back, making an impact on the world. And I've been pre-recording a whole bunch of episodes because I hope to be away a little bit over the next few weeks. So just to kind of stay up to speed, so I have a few exciting episodes that we'll be releasing, hopefully, in the upcoming weeks. And
so you pre-record them in advance. You could be consistent on the 2 weeks, every 2 weeks.
I try as best as I can. Like it's the summer months for me are a little bit slower because we finish our fiscal year June 30. Mm-hmm. So the summer months tend to be a lot of more organizational and prep work. So I do have a little more flexibility during the year when I get kind of into busy season. Try to get ahead because it's just otherwise it's like learning the Daf Yomi. If you learn the Daf Yomi, like especially if you teach the Daf Yomi, you got to try to stay ahead or you're just going to get killed. So it's always a good advice.
That is awesome. So first off, what we do is we're closing the deck rooms. I'm actually very surprised. We still have 11 people. Who are on. What I did was
Hey, Marty.
Yes.
Marty, I think I don't know how to get back to the breakout. Not so techy. It took me a while to get to know that there's actually you come back to the breakout from the breakout session anyway. Shalom Aleichem.
Yes. Shalom Aleichem Yermi. Thank you for being here. Does any of you have? Now we can kind of open it up to open discussion because this is a smaller group. It's a lot easier. Do you have any questions for Rabbi Dovid Cohen? I feel bad. First of all, let me just ask him for permission before I invite questions. Rabbi Dovid Cohen, are you okay with staying on for about 5-10 more minutes?
Yeah, I'm happy to help. Okay. I have a meeting at 4, but until then, I'm a little flexible. So
okay, so I asked permission, guys. He's all yours. Ask away. He's got many expertise from his rabbi hat to his business hat to his nonprofit hat. Feel free to ask a few questions.
I'm in Toronto, Canada. Rabbi Cohen here, or left here.
Where we may be mishpacha, who knows? We spell our last names in a similar fashion.
Could be. Tell me more. Tell me. I'm in Thornhill.
I'm joking. But I'm familiar with Toronto. I have a lot of relatives in Toronto. I know Thornhill. I know the area well.
Who do you know? Who's your family there?
So if there's a family, I mean, many of them have already moved or are married, but the Abramoff family.
Yes, my neighbor Baruch. The one that was
so Baruch passed away? Yehoshua Abramoff passed away a number of years ago. Rabbi Yehoshua Abramoff. So one of his daughters is married to my brother. One of his daughters is married to my brother.
She's married. She lives in Thornhill.
She lives. My sister-in-law and my brother live in Israel, but she was born in the Rabbi Marcus's community there, B'nai Torah.
Yes, I lived there as a kid many years.
Okay. Yeah, and I have another brother-in-law who's in the south, who lives in the south of Toronto, so I'm a little bit familiar. I don't hear. I don't know what happened. Sound. It's not there. Go. I think you're back now. Yeah, go ahead.
Who's that in the south? Who's?
His name is Kivi Eisenberg. He's married to a Abish family.
Sure.
Okay.
Abish. Very nice.
Very cool. Nice. Look at that. Very small world. Jewish geography is always a fun game.
Is everybody here? Anybody else here who's out from outside New York, or everybody here is from the New York area?
Montreal. I'm originally from London.
Oh, Montreal. And Rivka, you're from London, you said?
I'm originally from London. I live in Brooklyn.
Where do you live? Where do you live now?
You talking to me?
Where do you live now, Rivka? Yeah.
Brooklyn.
Brooklyn. Okay. Very
My
nice.
heart's in Brooklyn. My heart's in Crown Heights.
I'm in
I
London.
see. You're in Crown Heights. I see the Rabbi in the back. Not you, the other one.
Who? Me?
Joel, you're in London? No.
I'm in London.
To my heart.
Where in London?
In Stamford Hill.
Okay, I have a lot of family in Golders Green and Manchester. I'm also connected over there too.
Oh,
Which
wow.
street in Stamford Hill?
Waterman Quay. Craven Walk, Waterman Quay.
Oh, by the River Lee.
Right, exactly. You see,
I
I
can tell you
remember.
a funny story that happened to me once. By the River Lee. You know all the houseboats there? You know there's loads of houseboats? So once it was early in the morning, like really early. Maybe it was like 5:45 in the morning. And I wanted to go jogging. So I had all my jogging clothes and all my stuff. And I decided to do it early, bright, sharp, by the sunrise, nice and fresh and good. Now I was falling asleep as I'm jogging because it's really early. So I decided to put my AirPods in and listen to music that would get me to move. And I didn't realize I was completely in my own world, and I'm singing away like a Shem Melech song, and I woke up the people in the houseboat. Why are you going?
Wow.
I'm so embarrassed.
That is a funny story. Thank you for sharing. That is funny.
That's funny. I'll just share with the group that's here. So, I mean, hopefully some of you will get to know me better in the weeks and months. But one of the pride and joys of my life is my family.
Is this my
I didn't really talk. Sorry, is it okay? So I didn't really talk so much about my personal life here, but so I'm blessed with 5 children, and my eldest child, his name is Yedidya, and he has Down syndrome. So my first book, Living with Patients, Persons, we're almost there. So I talk a lot about raising a child with special needs, and as we're talking, I'm getting text messages from my colleagues at Yafad that they're all visiting with my son in camp, and they're sending me these great pictures. So it's bringing great joy to my face. There's a great video. I took my son at the end of June to a Mets baseball game. It was his birthday, and he threw out the first pitch at the game. And he treated it like it was the World Series. He jumped into my arms after he threw the pitch. It was super inspiring. So I think no matter what we're doing professionally, I'm sure all of you have that as a value. That ultimately, the most important thing is family, is to be present for our spouses, for our children, whoever the critical family members that we're blessed with at whatever stage of life. And it's not something we should take for granted. That was really the premise of my new book, in the sense that, the Queen of England commented during the pandemic. She was asked for one piece of advice. We have British people here, so one piece of advice she was asked in life, and when the new Israeli ambassador came to present her credentials, I think it was Tzipi Hotovely. No, I'm confused. Maybe it was somebody else. But whoever was the ambassador, she came to present her credentials. So her husband asked the Queen for one piece of advice, and that was outside the protocols. But she thought for a second, and she said that build human relationships. So that's a game changer ultimately in so many aspects of life, and it always begins inward. It always begins with those relationships with those closest to us. I'm not a big fan of people who kind of neglect the people around them for the sake of everybody on the outside. First, you have to start on the inside. That's the idea also of the ani that I spoke about, that ultimately, that the ani has to start with what's in front of you, right? Hopefully, as you expand and you grow your sphere of influence, you can have more and more people encapsulated within your ani, within your being, within who you are. But ultimately, a person has to be able to, you can't look past those who are, they know you best. They know when you're a faker, they know when you're for real, and they're really people that one should listen to and listen to their feedback.
Yeah, that's a big theme of Rabbi Shei's Taub. Very much.
Oh yeah, he and I live in the 5 towns. I don't know him personally, but I have listened to some of his. I've heard him speak a number of times. I'm a fan.
You got to
I
get
definitely.
there.
No, we should. In fact, yeah, I don't want to say too much here in public, but yeah, he's a person who I hear really good things about, and would definitely value getting to know better over time.
You knew Dovi. You knew Mr. Abramov.
Sure. He's my brother's father-in-law.
He's your brother? Wow. I mean, my family were very close. I'll give you a story. I don't know, a crazy story. He tells my father before he passed away. He tells my father he was the next day. He was Erev Shabbos, Friday afternoon, mamish close to Shabbos, and I guess he was speeding, or he went through a stop sign. Saw cops just across the street from where I live. Anyway, cop pulls him over. It's like maybe 15 minutes before Lichbenchen, and he keeps on going, I guess, and the cops are going after him and thinking he's running away. This guy's a tzaddik. Sorry, guys. Here, he's just a wonderful Jew. Passed away. A mathematician, a wonderful.
Yeah.
Talbot
Chacham wrote a sefer.
Yeah. The cop. He goes to his house. The cop pulls out a gun. This is at Mr. Abramoff, and he was shaking and all that, and then they realized, that he explained about Shabbos. So, I always would tell my father and I, putting on film and Mitzrayim and others, he was just always so appreciative and Makatayv, God bless him, Lias Neshama, Canadian, a wonderful Jew. Wow.
Yeah, so my brother's been married for almost 25 years already, so I knew him. I knew him relatively well. We had many interactions over the years before he fell ill. And it's a small world. In fact, my father and Rabbi Abramoff were classmates growing up, so they knew each other, and the kids ended up marrying each other. No, cool. You always have to be on your best behavior. You never know what's going to come back to.
Definitely a small world.
What's going to cover out of life? I'm a big believer in that. It's very important to, to keep it real, as they say.
By the way, this is pretty cool, but I gotta say, we still have 8 people watching us on LinkedIn Live. I thought we'd scare everyone away by now, but people are still watching us, so clearly we are interesting. By the way, if anyone is interested, I know a lot of people are in the Brooklyn area. Mickey Cohen and Heshi Friedman, the other people, are running a barbecue this weekend. The RB
and Yitzi Pariser.
And Yitzi Pariser.
I'm going, Mickey, and the Mickey.
Yeah, go.
Yeah, nice to see you. And did you find out if anyone in this group is going from New York?
So right now, I'm putting still a strong focus on its sponsorship opportunities because we're wrapping up with a few things. And as soon as Shabbos finishes, starting Sunday, or whatever, I know it's Tisha B'Av Sunday, I'm going to start putting more focus on the attendees and see if I can try to match up people for rides.
By the way, Shmuel, you should go. You want to come? I'll get you a ticket.
Shout out to Morty Lunger, the sponsor, one of the beauty sponsors.
Yes.
When is this? What event are we talking about?
It's this Sunday. Mickey, you want to? Very David Cohen, if you're able to come, I would love to meet you in person. So if you're able to come, it's a barbecue this Sunday. Mickey, you tell them more about it.
Wait, this Sunday is Tisha B'Av. So what do you mean? It's not this Sunday. You mean the week after?
Wait, no, not this Sunday. The 10th.
Wednesday.
Yeah.
Wednesday.
No, it's during the week. You're saying it's during the week.
It's Wednesday.
10th?
Sorry, I thought Sunday. I'm a little mixed up. It's Wednesday the 10th.
Morty, send me the information offline. I'll check my schedule. If I can make it, I'll check it out.
I will definitely send you the flyer.
Morty?
Yes.
Morty, can I just ask a quick thing? Morty, are you able to do a screen share? Do you want to share the flyer?
Yeah, can you? Here, you want to know what I could do really cool? Send me the flyer on WhatsApp, and I'll share it on the screen so everyone can see it. Send me the flyer on WhatsApp. I'm waiting for it, and I'll share on the screen.
Do you have the flyer that has your sponsorship on it?
I don't think so. You have that?
Let me see if I can find it on file. Let me see if I can find that.
I'm happy to share. Also, we have people on LinkedIn still, so we have 5 people watching on LinkedIn, and the recording will be on there too. So if anyone on LinkedIn wants to join, it's Wednesday. What time is it, Mickey? From when to when?
It's gonna be Wednesday, August 10th, 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. You have Brian Wallace flying in from Minnesota. You have Isaac Badur's flying in from Florida for speaking. You have Elliot Spiegel's also going to be a speaker, unless he drives very fast. He's going to be flying in also, but he lives in the tri-state in Jersey, next to me actually. But yeah, and aside from that, there's going to be many people coming. There's me, I'm going to send you the barbecue event schedule, and I'm going to send you the flyer.
If anyone's coming from New York, that would be great. If I can get it like.
There's a lot of people coming from New York. You had to clarify which part of New York.
Brooklyn.
Brooklyn. Mickey, you sent it to me?
Yeah, I just sent it. I couldn't find the one that had your flyer, but I sent you the standard flyer of the
good.
Of the schedule and of course of the event. Once I'm talking, David Cohen, thank you so much. Great Zoom, and shout out to Morty for being involved in behind scenes and in front scenes and all that as well. I do love your last name. And I'm always curious to know.
By the way, look at this. We have 3 boxes that go straight down on my screen. Cohen, Cohen, Cohen. But okay.
Nice.
Thank you so much.
Sometimes when people say, "Oh, which Cohen?" When sometimes people try to play his Jewish geography and say, "Oh, which Cohen are you?" I'm like, "Nah, it's not such a popular last name. You probably don't know anyone."
Morty, Beryl Solomon. How about getting Beryl Solomon? Maybe I don't know if anybody here is a fan of him, but he has some thing to share.
He was at my event 6 weeks ago. We had him at my event.
All right, yeah. I'm in Canada, Toronto. It's like another.
I would bring Beryl Solomon on for one of these at some point. Like I said, we're just getting started here. We're building it up. Nice. But I'm very glad we had Rabbi Dovid Cohen.
Mickey wanted to ask a question. You wanted to ask him?
Yes, I do want to ask you a question. I'm always curious to know when successful people like you get on and things. I'm curious to know how you got your journey going, more on a personal side. Like, is this something you've always envisioned yourself doing, and how did you get to where you are now?
I will make sure I got the question fully. I'll take issue with the successful. You know, how we define success is always interesting. But putting that aside, you're asking me, did I always envision doing what I'm doing today? Like, is that what you're asking?
Correct.
So I find in life, it's interesting. I wanted to maybe say this, but I didn't say this. You know, there's so many things that I've tried to do in life that I haven't been successful at. You know, people don't even know half the things that I tried to do that never panned out. I never tried to start my own business, like a startup or anything like that. But there are all different types of opportunities that I've explored over the years, where there were opportunities. I write about this in my recent book as well, in one of the footnotes. You know, I posted this morning. I'm just going to read it from my phone because I saw this great quote, and it resonated with me in a very deep way. I think maybe it goes to your question. They say a winner is just a loser that kept on trying, and that's me to a T. How many times do I lose? But one thing I won't do is give up, and I'm only here as a winner because I chose not to give up and just kept going. So I think that resonates with me. This was from a professional golfer, actually. His name is what's his name? His name is I'm not even sure. Oh, his name is Tony something. I'm not even sure. It's actually Tony. His name is Tony Finau. Finau. Tony Finau apparently just won a golf tournament, and this was his quote. But it resonated with me very deeply. Okay, basically, I'm a winner, basically, because I kept losing and I just kept on trying. To whatever degree I'm anywhere in my life, it's because I fell down, like the concept of Sheva Yipol Tzadik Yikam. And that's really the theme of my first book, in the sense that I get knocked down all the time. You know, I'm saying people take pot shots at me daily, and I don't know what the why that is. Like keeps you humble, keeps you grounded. But I think that one thing I could say about myself with a lot of confidence is I'm a plugger. I don't give in easy. I don't quit easily. I may be frustrated for a day or two. I may get discouraged, but I'll just keep plugging, and I'll go on to the next thing, and I'll figure out, and I'll push, and I'll get myself into a good headspace, and I'll push for that. And I've gone for some crazy opportunities in my life. They haven't all worked out. My wife was like, "What do you do?" My wife was like, "You're crazy. Like, what do you?" And I'm like, "No. Like, you don't realize how far I got. I connected with the guy. We had 3 meetings already. Like, even though it doesn't work out, there's nothing to show for. Like, I'm not going to start talking about the job I interviewed for that I didn't get. Like, that's private. But I'm saying, like, there are many times I've tried to do things. That when I was younger, I tried to be a sports agent. I was willing to fly out to California. I'll do all types of crazy things if it makes sense, and if I think it's going to make me happy, and I think there's something. So in that sense, like I'll reach out to anybody. Like I'll try to get to the guy. You have to use common sense, and time is your most precious commodity. And I don't, I try to be sensitive to that. But if I think there's a shot at something, like I start off believing I can do almost anything, and like then it's like trying and trusting in Hashem to guide you where you're supposed to be. So
Beautiful.
That's beautiful.
To me, that's really the way I see life in general. There's so many things that happened to me that were unexpected or not what I would have planned. So I'm not one of these guys that like I planned it out or worked out exactly the way I go where I am. This is where I am now, and we'll see where Hashem takes me next. That's kind of the way I live my life.
Thank you for sharing. We do have to wrap up. Everyone, I actually have to run. Thank you, Rabbi Dovid Cohen. We've been on live for about an hour and a half or so, a little more on LinkedIn.
Yermi has a quick question. Let him just ask this question.
Sure.
If I can't answer it quickly,
I'll just respond privately. Thank you.
Oh, okay, fine, no problem. Okay, awesome. Nice meeting everybody. Thank you for your time. I hope it was helpful. Morty, I'd love to see that flyer. If you could just send it to my WhatsApp. It's hard to read it here, but I'd love to see it.
I will send it to your WhatsApp, of course. I'll send it to you.
Okay.
All right. Take care, everyone.
Will David's information be shared as well? Are we able to connect with him?
Yeah, please connect with him on LinkedIn. He shared his email in the chat. Do you want to share one more time, David?
A bunch of people already reached out on LinkedIn.
I tagged him. I tagged him on the LinkedIn post. Mickey, if you want to go to my LinkedIn, you'll see him. I tagged him there, so you could follow him on LinkedIn, message him.
So you can definitely find me on LinkedIn, or if you need my email, it's info@rabbidovidmcohen.com. info@rabbidovidmcohen.com. So either email me, send me a message on WhatsApp. I'm on all social channels. You can find me on Kimat, any social media channel, and I try to be as responsive as possible. So hopefully I can be responsive.
Maybe you could put in the WhatsApp group that you have, Morty.
I got it. I'll take care of you. Awesome. Glad we got connected. I'll see you guys at the barbecue, hopefully. All right. Take care, guys.
Morty, you have a WhatsApp chat for this group? I don't think I'm in it.
I will add you. If you're not in there, I will definitely add you. Yeah, it's for the community meetups.
Okay.
I will add you.
Yeah, very good. Okay.
If anyone on LinkedIn, if anyone is not in that group, please reach out. I will get you added. I tend to not keep updated with it. A lot of people want to be added. I'm like, oh, you're not in there. I can't keep track of who's in that group, who's not.
No, I think we spoke about it, but I think somehow I just missed it.
Okay, I will definitely get you added. Okay, fine, awesome. Thank you again. I hope you all enjoyed, and we'll get this on YouTube so you can all see the recording. Amazing content here. And
thank you.
Thank you.
Take care, everyone.
Great work you're doing. Keep it up.
Thank you.